Why does it seem like men hate astrology? Why does it seem like most of the content out there when it comes to astrology is geared towards women? Let's talk about it. So, because the question at hand is a generalization, it's a stereotype, this means that in order for us to engage in conversation around this topic, I will have to speak in terms of generalizations. So what this means is that we won't be talking about any one person specifically. Every human being is a unique individual, special snowflake on their own, but we're not talking about individuals today. So that means that there's nothing for you to take personally here. That's today's disclaimer. If that's too much for you to handle, feel free to hit the thumbs down and unsubscribe, close the video out now, whatever you need to do. Don't worry, I promise I won't be offended. Also, to note that this tends to be more of the vibe in Western culture. This isn't the way it is all the way out throughout the world. Otherwise, if you're good with all that, let's keep going. So, before we even get into men this, women that, the first thing we need to do is get clear on some definitions. We're going to need to define the difference between energy and biology. Specifically, masculine and feminine energy, right, versus men and women as defined by their traditional biological functions. If we're not clear on these definitions, you might think I'm saying something I'm not. And so we want to avoid as much confusion as we possibly can. Even if you don't like these definitions, if we're not using the same definitions, then we can't even get to the topic that we want to talk about because we won't be understanding each other. If you ever had one of those arguments where it's like 10 minutes later you both realize, well, wait a minute, what are we arguing about here exactly? Oh, that's what we're talking about? Oh, I actually agree with you on that. That's why definitions. So then, what is a man and what is a woman? With this Aquarian age upon us now, it's funny. It's just, you got CRISPR gene editing, cloning, stem cell research that's been done in the past decade or two, maybe even longer. In the future, who knows what will happen to these terms, man and woman. But back when things seemed simpler, the study of biology brought about with it the need to separate the human species in terms of their sexual function. AKA, men have sperm, women have eggs. Ovaries on the inside, balls on the outside. More estrogen in one, more testosterone in the other. Yes, the Aquarian age will bring all kinds of experimentation with that, and already has, in fact, right? But that's not what we're talking about right now. So for the sake of this video, when I say men and when I say women, these biological functions are what I'm talking about here. This is the definition we'll be using in this video. Not what your neighbor thinks or what the students at the local university you live nearby think, but only this definition of biological function. Eggs versus sperm. Ovaries, woman. Balls, man. That's it. Now, what about masculine and feminine energy? Well, energy has a certain range to it, right? And where that energy is in that range can tell us how intensely or how loosely that energy is being expressed. So there's a certain spectrum to it, right? You can have your regular light bulb, which generates a certain amount of light and heat, or you can have the rays of the sun, right? Or UV rays as well, right? All of these generate light and heat, but how intense that is expressed differently between each of them. So there's a spectrum when it comes to energy. You can express a little bit of masculine energy, or you can express a lot of masculine energy. You can express a little bit of feminine energy, or you can express a lot of feminine energy. So then, what is masculine and what is feminine? What does astrology have to say about masculine and feminine energy? Well, in terms of astrology, there's actually 3 masculine planets, 3 feminine planets, and 3 androgynous planets that tell you everything you need to know about the masculine and feminine energies in any particular chart. If you're curious about what that looks like in your chart, There's someone who does readings with this information that you might have access to by clicking the link in the website in the description below. Instead of talking about 9 planets though, we'll make it much simpler than that. We'll just use the sun and the moon in this video, and we'll cover that in a bit. You've probably heard of the law of physics that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred into something else. Masculine energy is projective. It's when energy is pointed towards something. Feminine energy is receptive. It's when energy is being received. Masculine energy is the observer. It's to pay attention to something. Feminine energy is the energy of being observed. It's to be paid attention to. It's to receive the attention. The hormone estrogen correlates to feminine energy. The hormone testosterone, which is basically the energy of Mars, correlates to masculine energy. It's the increase of either testosterone or estrogen in the womb during specific stages in pregnancy that has a lot to do with whether that fetus ends up being male or female. Both hormones, though, are still present in any pregnancy, regardless of the gender. So what do we have? We have men who, because they are male, generally have more testosterone, which means they generally have more masculine energy. And we have women who, because they are female, generally have more estrogen, which generally speaking means they have more feminine energy. When human beings are attempting sex changes, or if they're athletes taking steroids, basically trying to put more masculine energy into them, put more Mars into them, so they can project more successfully in their field, testosterone and estrogen are the 2 hormones that they have to manage and manipulate to make that happen physiologically. Women, or those with more feminine energy, are more wired to take the world in. This is how biology stereotypically makes women good moms. And this is why some men are really good stay-at-home dads. It's how one parent can distinguish between one cry, meaning the baby's hungry, and this type of cry means the baby's sleepy, versus someone who just hears a crying baby. Shut that thing up. This receptivity makes a person very receptive to nature. So one of the reasons that women tend to be more drawn to astrology is because astrology has a lot to do with lining yourself up with the cycles of nature, or how what is being analyzed lines up with what is taking place in nature, in the sky. So by default, being in tune with the cycles of nature means that astrology is more likely to make sense to you compared to those who biologically are not forced to be in touch with the cycles of nature. And by make sense, I mean you're able to understand that cycles affect human behavior. It's like the birds, they live in accordance with nature, the bees live in accordance with nature, but us human beings, we're this interesting bunch in the sense that we can go against the flow of nature if we want. Slightly more so able to do that if you're a male gendered than if you're female. So you might be asking, what does he mean by this? How sexist is this video going to be? How can he actually prove any of this? Well, here's an example of just what I'm talking about. For every woman out there in the world, whether they liked it or not, once their biology decided it was time for puberty to strike, they didn't have a choice. They instantly, from that moment forward, had to start dealing with something once a month that men just aren't able to relate to. And this is also a part of why women don't need as much explaining about the effects of cycles on human beings, is because they live it. Women can even follow their own cycle by following the phases of the moon, and just use the future phases of the moon to predict when their monthly is going to show up in the future. Literally being able to predict by the day with accuracy a month in advance on what day you might start bleeding just by knowing in the sky where the moon is something almost any woman can learn how to do, and is, in fact, a form of astrology. Boyfriends and husbands can learn what phase of the moon that their partner's cycle is going to repeat themselves to. It's not magic, it's not witchcraft, it's not rocket science. In fact, this stuff used to be common knowledge once upon a time before people had apps to track these things, right? The word month itself actually comes from the word moon. The modern day calendar is called the modern day calendar because it's the most modern, it's the newest. There used to be entire civilizations that operated on a 13-month calendar of 28 days, with each day according with each phase that the moon would go through in its cycle, from new moon to full moon and back. None of this information I've said so far, by the way, means that men aren't affected by the moon or any of that men don't have feminine energy. I'm going to explain all that further. This is just explaining why the moon affects those with more lunar energy in their nature. There are some men who are maybe born at night or have the moon in a really feminine zodiac sign and with other aspects in their chart that provides them in particular with a lot of feminine energy. All right? This can really result in them being strongly affected by the moon as well. There's a difference between a person's gender and their energy. On the other hand, this means then that you have beings whose energies are not so dominated by the moon. Beings whose energies are more dominated by the light of the day, the sun. Alright, so let's talk about that. The sun generates its own heat, its own light, and its own power. The sun's actions, therefore, are of its own will, of its own energy. This is in contrast to the moon, which is absorbing the light of the sun. The moon is a receptive planet. The sun, on the other hand, represents the self, the ego, the sense of I, the sense of me that you put out there into the world. The ego doesn't need to believe in astrology, doesn't need to believe in moon landings or whether the earth is round. It doesn't need to believe in anything. These are concerns for the left brain, the intellect. That's the part of our brain that deals with logic. It's ruled by Mercury. Mercury, by the way, is one of those androgynous planets that I was talking about earlier. That's astrology showing us that you can be an idiot or a genius regardless of how masculine or feminine you are, by the way. But the point is that the sun, aka the ego, that's the sense of self. And all the ego needs to do, all your sense of self needs to do is keep itself alive, to keep itself going. That's it. What does the ego need to do to survive here on Earth, in this world specifically? It needs to pay attention to what it needs to deal with right in front of it. What the five senses are telling is right in front of it. Whether that's a bear over there behind those trees or a wolf in the corner behind the bushes, the ego is concerned about the tangible, material, here and now type of things. So basically, when it comes to survival in the here and now, your ego's not going to give a damn about what constellation the moon is in, or where's Jupiter, or is Mercury moving backwards today. Like, none of that matters. If a wolf is creeping up on you in the woods while your friends or your family are asleep in a tent or something, like, your ego, your sense of self, physiologically is going to force you to pay attention to that threat that's right in front of you. It's going to make it a lot harder to just sit down and think about what types of events future cycles might bring you. Right? The thought of that's going to seem absolutely stupid, like a huge waste of time, because survival is more important than that. Right? The modern version of the wolf in the woods is, why are you talking to me about stars and planets? I got bills to pay on Monday. Hello? What is this stuff? Right? And all of this is completely natural. It's a completely normal function of the ego. Everyone who is a human being, yes, including you have a function of your consciousness called the ego that wants you, aka the self, to stay alive. All of this correlates to the sun, by the way. The sun representing the ego. A side effect of having an ego, aka a sense of self, basically, is self-interest and not being able to see beyond the material world that's right in front of you. Why? Because being self-interested and paying attention to the material world right in front of you is all you need to stay alive. Everything else is kind of extra. So if your awareness can't shine a light on it, if you can't consciously see it, then your consciousness, as far as it's concerned, there's really nothing there at all. The self is here to assert itself, regardless of the weather or what's happening in the stars. The self will always be the self. And there's a sense of steadiness in that sense of consciousness that's irrelevant to astrology or anything else that's happening externally. So that's how astrology is to the most masculine of energies, to the most masculine of beings. That's how the masculine energy in all of us responds to astrology. So it's natural to ignore things or to have doubts about things you can't actually see. in the material world right in front of you. In many ways, it's a good thing. You're not always going to be right, but there are times in life for that type of thinking where you just focus on what's right in front of you. Hundreds of years ago, people used to laugh at the idea that there were living things in the water, right? This is before microscopes could prove that bacteria existed. Many of them probably died from not washing their hands or something dirty like that. Well, technically they're all dead, but that's besides the point. The point is that the sun's thing is to put its energy out there, not to be concerned with receiving energy or how it receives energy or what's the good day to receive energy. They are not concerns of the sun. Basically, beings ruled by the moon will have the ability to be more receptive to the vibrations of things around them. Beings ruled by the sun will have the ability to push their vibration out to others. So yes, men, if you haven't figured it out by now, tend to be more solar. But not always. These are generalizations we're speaking about, right? And women tend to be more lunar. But not always. Everyone has the sun and the moon somewhere in their charts. And we all have ancestral DNA from both genders. Hopefully by now you get how that works. And hopefully if you're still with me on this very nuanced topic this far, you haven't been tempted to think of this in terms of some gender war thing, and you're actually able to see both sides of the spectrum here and how both polarities are important for human beings to be functional. But it's this natural sense of ego that makes more masculine beings reject astrology. Masculine energy is here to project itself. It's here to take action. It's here to create a cause, not absorb an effect. Something that exists to take action and to stand out isn't really here to give its power away to something else. The achievement of the goal is the only concern of the true masculine. Everything else is just noise. Plus the ego wants to know, how is this information going to help my survival here and now in the material concrete world, right? The ego can very easily understand that if you turn the stove on, I can start a fire that I can cook my food with because I can see the fire. I can see the food cooking. But if you tell me Jupiter's transiting my 10th house and I'm going to get a nice new job and then I don't, the ego's going to have a problem with that. And all of that is fine as far as the masculine's concerned, or our ego, or our sense of self. All that is fine, except the problem of the ego is biased thinking. It's limited to what it can consciously perceive. And there's only so many things a person can pay attention to. That's why it's so easy to be biased. Most people are. This has us in a world full of people who are just repeating already preformed beliefs from their upbringing, which is just like some knee-jerk reaction that people have when they're half asleep responding to things, because the ego can be victim to so many biases. I think there's 25 of them, in fact, although looking at this Wikipedia article, it seems to be a lot more than 25 of them, but it comes down to cognitive bias. Why? There's a lot of problems in the field of astrology as well as many other different fields for human beings in the world today. It's biases that can lead to entire cultural or global paradigms that just aren't true, and make biases a natural problem of the human brain that we humans need to pay way more attention to than we actually do. Anyway, I know that's a lot of concepts here. I am honestly not even sure if I explain them too much or not well enough, but I trust that as far as the astrology concepts of the sun and the moon are concerned, that they have at least given you a practical explanation of why men and women generally respond to astrology in the way that they do. See you next week. One love, be well, peace.